Agile does expose those things, just like Scrum does.
But looking through this, it does seem like people could hide very easily.
People could hide.
In any process, I know.
I think it's a matter of degree.
So you're still going to
Right.
have your sprint commitments, you're still going to have your sprint reviews and your retrospectives,
Right.
and all of that is still in place. It's just in place at multiple levels, where we have the other inputs that are coming in and being added iteratively to the team's work.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of degree. I think if Jeff Sutherland were sitting here, he would say it's not agile enough. But I think,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
for the culture of the company, I think that where they are at, I think it's sort of the best that they
But I
can do
think
right
that's
now.
the exact answer. I
Yeah.
think that we haven't quite gotten there yet.
Right, yeah, I think
to
they're, yeah, and I think,
this safe or scale, it hasn't gotten there yet.
It's not there yet. So what we're doing
Agile.
is-
No, you did it amazing. I mean, this is, I've done a lot of this kind of stuff, and I know how hard that was when you did it, so.
But what we're doing is not standard scaled Agile, right?
yeah.
But it's what we can do. It's Agile, we do what we
I
can.
mean, that's what.
We make it better next time.
Get it done.
Go ahead.
I go back to my very first question. What is a standard Agile? There isn't any.
Right.
Agile is standard for the given organization.
Right.
I say Agile for Micro Focus is very different than Agile. Well, say for I don't know, Intel,
Right.
or for that matter, and to just elaborate on what you asked is think about implementing or even thinking of implementing SAFe in any government organization, and you're talking about hiding. Okay? Now, let's talk about it. Right now, our Defense Department is very heavy on implementing SAFe. Would they succeed? What is the standard Agile? Agile is as standard as how Rosemary and Gordon and your team are implementing in your organization.
We are doing what works for our organization. What works in yours will be different. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Also, I mean, one of the challenges I've been facing when implementing more or less scaled approach is, as you said, the feeding in from the top into
Right.
the other levels. Particularly when it comes to the portfolio, because there's often the concern about transparency, concern about accountability.
And then there's some internal competition too.
Yeah.
Actually, there is many more.
It doesn't always go smooth, and I
Yeah.
think,
Right.
I mean, like a couple of years ago, I remember one where there was like a disconnect at the very beginning of the first day
Yeah.
between, you know, some of the people in the management of what, like, I thought we were aiming for this, no, we're aiming for that, and it's like, it almost went off the rails in the first hour. And so you have to be,
Yeah.
you have to be prepared for that.
Yep, you
So
do.
how is it feeding in now? You have these iterations, right? It can feed in at any time.
So you have each product increment, which is an amount of time that you determine for your team, right? And you pick your product increment length for reasons that are important to you. Each one you do another one of these 2-day plans.
Okay.
Or, you know, perhaps a little shorter if you have short product increments, or a little longer if you want, they vary. But, so that is when the feedback comes in for the most part. Always in Agile, somebody's going to say, this is now more important than that, we're going to switch and do this other thing instead. But ideally, you have that scoped, and you have something of a similar size that you can replace.
Okay, so you basically say like most of the time you get those feeds in at the beginning, you're planning, and you're trying to keep it as constant a scope as possible, maybe with some trade in and trade out, but overall you keep it.
You try, but you know, it's Agile, so
Yeah.
you have to be Agile. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think that part of what nobody puts on these charts, because it's too difficult for people to acknowledge, is that Agile is really about managing entropy and ignorance.
Yes.
Okay? And entropy sort of implies that management isn't really in control, and they don't kind of like to admit that. And ignorance means that not everybody isn't as good as they think they are, right? So the point that Agile makes is, well, is it good enough for now, right? Because when we tried for perfection, we didn't get anything done, right?
We're stuck there trying to be
So-
protected.
So the key question is, in your particular market niche, are your customers happy enough with what you're delivering now,
Exactly.
right? And, you know, except for certain aspects of the military where lives are really on the line and all that kind of stuff, most people can handle a few bugs if there's a few minor features that are missing and so on down the line, right? And if you deliver close to what you promised, close to what you are in time, close to what the price you expected to pay, then they go, well, that's way better than it was a decade ago, right?
That's true.
So the difficulty is that not only is there no standard Agile, there are no standard customer requirements,
That's true.
right? So before we did all of this Agile stuff, we used to argue about customers don't know what they want, so how are we supposed to make waterfall work, right? So there's a continuum between Six Sigma, which means we think we can completely dehumanize the process by squeezing out variation, right? All the way to deep research, which is, you know, if we figured out it didn't work, that's still a success. Whoa, wait, really?
It's a success. Fail early, fail often, that way you don't waste any more time on it.
Well, but it is true, but if you're in the Six Sigma world,
Yes.
and I tell you, you know, fail early and fail often, this sounds like, you know, do things wrong for a really long time,
Oh, yeah.
right? So the Six Sigma people don't even agree that fail early, fail often is a goal, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is where are you in that continuum?
It's much better, I understand, but I personally think that it's much better to find out now that it doesn't work than to find out 2 years down the line after I've poured, you know, billions of dollars and all my manpower into this thing.
Well, that's closer because fail early, fail often is because you're closer to the entropy ignorance side,
That's right.
right? And the Six Sigma people are closer to the like, we can beat this into submission.
Well, there's also the political aspect of it where, you know, people's job is on the line, contractor's job. I mean, I'd rather work on a contract that, you know, it takes 5 years, gets nowhere, and I get paid for 5 years. And then I open up my mouth and say, you know, if I were you, I would do it this way. But then I'll be out of a job after 6 months. You know, I'd rather like just keep my mouth shut. You know, you're in charge. After 5 years, you don't like it. I got paid 5 years worth of, you know,
It's a valid
salary, and then I'm not gonna open up my mouth and tell you something that, you know, is like cannibalistic to me, where, you know, I'm eating out, I'm gonna eat my paycheck, right?
And
It's only gonna last me 6 months if I tell you what I think I would do.
I actually have not heard that point brought up before.
I mean, everybody's
here.
here, I mean, you know, you go to any contractor or go to any financial advisor, they all say that, you know, well, you know, I also represent this company and I'm your financial advisor, but I'm at the same time, I'm gonna recommend you just go to this one exclusive. So there's conflicts of interest and you just gotta be aware of that.
Right, because the pressure on the other side, her company has competitors, and if they, you know, don't do this efficiently and kind of mess up and don't produce anything useful, the competitors are gonna eat their lunch, right?
Yeah.
And their sales are gonna go down, and, you know, they might all lose their jobs, so I think that's the other side of it, that, you know, puts the sense of urgency to it.
So you've gotta kinda like do your shopping, just not rely on one source, go to different sources, because, you know, the smaller players, right, they're hungry, they're more motivated to find you a solution, whereas the bigger players, you know, they may have a better reputation, but they may not be working in your best interest, right? So you just gotta
It's
shop
an
around.
interesting thing to try to figure out the best
Yeah,
way
you
to
just
do
gotta
it.
shop around, see what
All right, so I have only a limited amount of time, so I'm going to move along. So the plan never survives first contact with the enemy. When I stepped into that first meeting with the remote teams there, they crossed their arms and they said, "Why do we have to do this?" And I spent that period of time explaining to them why they had to do it, even though we had meetings beforehand, which if they had attended, they would have known about, and I held them at good times, that they could come. But they didn't do any of the prep work, and they were like just very resentful. I think they felt I wasn't actually doing it with the other teams. I was doing it just to pick on them. I suspect. So we,
Well, that's narcissistic.
I suspect, right? So that may not be the case, but I'm being very frank here, right? So I spent that meeting talking them into doing this process. And so they then came back and said, well, we don't have the information we need to do this. We haven't received it from product management yet. So the next day, instead of having the second day of meetings with them, I had meetings with them in product management.
So they
To
were
get
right?
their questions.
Were they right?
Well,
Yeah.
some team members had the information, they hadn't shared it with other team members, and there was some missing information. So that meant my Thursday, Friday schedule was completely bollocks done. Because the earlier in the week schedule had spread out.
So you had to be agile about the planning of your plan.
Right, so I spent every night revising the schedule and sending out new meetings and agendas and so forth. And then we determined that Excel is not a PI planning tool. It just did not do the job
I'm shocked.
in any way, shape, or form.
And how does Jira, in its format, manage to avoid the same scant look? Because a lot of Jira looks very much like...
Right, but Jira is, it has a web interface, and I do things in the web and it works. So I export into a static Excel file. I have 75 people editing it.
Yes, yes. Oh,
Okay? No.
oh that hurts.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So, and the delays cause more delays, which cause more delays, it went on and on and on. So, however, the teams were able to meet the goals of the release planning. They did create their PI objectives. They created their initial sprint plans. They have everything set out that we had asked them to do. They were able to complete. The dependencies were identified and planned for and discussed between the teams. The risks were identified and handled, and the team was confident. At the end, at the retrospect, I got very nice feedback. It wasn't all positive feedback, but I got good constructive feedback. For example, not to use Excel. And someone is going to be investigating portfolio. We've already had 2 people get it and try to make it work and fail, but this person wants to try, so they'll do it. And then there are other tools that we'll be looking into to see if we can find something better. If you have suggestions, I would love to hear them. Now, the last thing I'd like you guys to do is, based on what you know, I'll take out this, I can't edit my exercise. I use the word standard here, and we're not going to use that word anymore, but I can't take it out of my presentation. Why can't I? Now I can. Okay. Oh. Based on what you know about Scaled Agile, I gave you that little overview in the meeting for the people who didn't know anything about it, and based on what you know, I would like to, I was going to have you guys go ahead and form into teams and make a little presentation on what you think we did well, what we didn't do so well, and what we could do better next time, and share your presentation. But perhaps in the interest of time, you can all write a few ideas on sticky notes and put them on the board.
So we're doing a retrospective.
We're doing
on
a
you.
retrospective of my planning meeting.
Right.
So, folks, to help Rosemary, we have pens here, and there's some more sticky notes if you have, if you need one, just raise your hand. Okay, there you go. I like the big, do you guys like the Sharpies? Are you, just a pen?
Oh, yeah.
I like usually big Sharpies so everyone can see it.
Oh.
Great.
If this was up to you, what would you do? Give me a stick. That's right, your big stick. I'm not allowed to have this. It wouldn't be long enough to reach the people in Prague anyway.
Do they have a product there?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'll heat it up.
Oh, yeah, this is like the left,
Sounds very
what's left there.
familiar. I have Vietnam and,
No, sorry, because they came over to our site.
Yeah.
9 of them came over. to
and
our site.
Israel and Prague, so not Czech Republic, not France, but yeah.
You should also want to mess with because they work on, you know, their different data.
Yes, yes, thank
You
you.
know, yeah.
I have the,
I think